Jagmeet Singh is confronted by Rebel News at the leadership debate where he refuses to condemn the violence that has been directed towards Christians in Canada. Francois Blanchet of the Bloc Québécois disappoints me with his response to the independent media. Welcome to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. I'm your host. As many of you may or may not be aware, the independent media has turned away from all of the leadership rallies except for the conservative rallies, which always permits the media to come in. This time, though, they petitioned the leadership debate, and many of the independent media were represented there. Unfortunately for the independent media, there was a lot of hostility directed toward them from the politicians, from the leaders, except for Pierre Poilievre, who answered the questions or spoke to them at least in a way that was respectful. Jagmeet Singh was way over the top. I didn't see any of Rebel News asking Kearney as yet, though I did see Kearney speak to somebody from Juno. That's not in this video. And then I saw Francois Blanchet get very rude, and it really kind of disappointed me, not because I have any special affinity to Blanchet, but I just expect that a person who's trying to become an independent from Canada would have some affinity to people that are not part of the Canadian corporations. But I guess it's just a lot of talk, and when the rubber meets the road, when they put where the proof in the pudding, we can see what kind of people they really are.
Why do you think that it's ethically acceptable to marginalize conservatives and refuse to treat them with respect? Answer: I do not answer questions from Rebel News because it's an organization that spreads disinformation, so I'm not going to answer your question. But
so in case you didn't hear it, and I only cut it down a little bit, she asked him why he's so disrespectful to independent media, to conservative or right-leaning media. And he says, I refuse to answer any questions that come out of the Rebel News because they spread mis and disinformation. Now, this shows a couple of things about the character flaws of Jagmeet Singh. It also shows his lack of experience. You are now speaking as the leader of the party at a leadership debate to be Prime Minister of Canada. You are not permitted to slander anybody, especially not the media. I mean, Rebel News has been around for years. They got millions of followers on YouTube. I don't know what their Rumble looks like, but I know that they seem to have people in Australia. They have people in England. They have people in France. They have people in Canada. And they have people in BC, Alberta, Ontario, Quebec. And yet, one of the interesting things about the Rebel News that not many Canadians realize, which I'll tell you right now, they were the ones that successfully sued the Liberal government so that they couldn't ban you. They block you when you are trying to follow their accounts. It's against the law for a politician to post any information. And now, because of the Rebel News ruling, when they post any information online that has to do with government, you have the right to see it. Now, you don't have the right to comment. They can mute you, but they can't block you. It's Rebel News that you owe that to. Jagmeet Singh, a lawyer, university-educated, privately educated man whose entire persona is based on him screaming how he doesn't want to support the corporations and their wealthy CEOs, except apparently when it comes to the media. Then he will only support the wealthy CEOs and the corporations. If you're young, and if you're trying to be an independent, forget about it. Jagmeet Singh has no time for you. He only has time for CBC, CTV, and Global. The corporations, the conglomerates, the massive multi-billion-dollar organizations. However, being professional, the reporter from Rebel News did not let Jagmeet Singh dissuade her from asking a follow-up question.
you are banned from the Indian territory for your policies, but here in Canada you support censorship and words that you think are unacceptable, especially through censorship online, and you actually refuse to answer questions from journalists with whom you do not agree, as you have just done. So you should be punished in one way or another, is the impression that leaves. So How are you different than people who would put you in prison? Answer. That is another example of why I do not answer questions from Rebel News.
That's another reason why he doesn't answer questions from Rebel News, because they ask him questions that he doesn't want to answer. What kind of a person can tell himself that he's going to be leader of a country that he knows is a mosaic, but he's going to pick and choose who he can talk to? He's going to pick and choose who can talk to him. He's going to pick and choose who he will help and who he will not help, as represented by the very next question from a different Rebel News reporter who covers British Columbia.
Your party takes great pride in standing against hate such as white supremacy, Islamophobia, and online.
Sorry, I didn't get your outlet.
Drea Humphrey with Rebel News.
Okay.
Your party.
You know where I'm going to go with this, all right?
Can I speak?
Yeah, you can. I'm just going to say you know where I'm going to go with it, though.
Wow. Your party takes pride in standing against hate such as white supremacy, Islamophobia, and online hate speech. Yet you stay silent about ongoing attacks against Christians, even after conservative MP Jamil Javani's order paper question revealed that over 200 churches have been targeted by arson and vandalism since claims of remains being discovered at former residential schools swept the nation in 2021. These claims have been disproven by bands that excavated and remain unproven by those that have not. Will you condemn the rise in acts of hate against Christians today and explain what your party will do moving forward to keep Christians safe from hate in Canada?
Again, thank you, but I'm not going to respond to an organization that promotes misinformation and disinformation like Rebel News. So no, I'm not going to respond to your question.
So Jagmeet Singh gets told that there's all kinds of hatred towards Christians in the country, and that Drea Humphreys feels that he doesn't speak enough to that hatred. And his answer is, I'm not going to talk to you right now. So he doesn't care about the churches that are burned down. He doesn't care about the hatred going towards Christians. He doesn't care. He would rather allow it to happen than speak to what he would do about it.
Perhaps you didn't hear me. Over 200 Christian places of worship have been attacked in Canada since 2021. Many served First Nations communities. Many were historic, and they diverted police and resources and put others at risk. What do you say to Canadians who see your refusal to answer, especially from one of the few media outlets here that are not funded by the state, as proof that a vote for you is a vote for a dangerous radical party that gaslights the public into thinking it stands against hate when its silence is instead emboldening Christophobia?
Your question is another example of why I don't respond to agencies like Rebel News that promote misinformation and disinformation.
I think Jagmeet Singh should realize that misinformation and disinformation is just a fancy way of saying lying and deceiving, and that if he wants to slander the character of the individual asking the question like that, he opens himself up to a pretty big lawsuit, in my humble opinion. I like the idea that both Rebel News reporters came prepared with questions that were based around Jagmeet Singh not answering the question. Like, they knew he wasn't going to answer the question, and their follow-up question was based around that idea. I like the foresight. I like the professionalism that exudes. I've seen lots of reporters come into these question periods and never understand what to do when the individual refuses to answer the question. That's why so many of them fall apart when they're coming up against Pierre Poilievre. Now, Jagmeet Singh saying that I don't care what's happening to Christians, and then she followed it up by saying, how are you going to tell people that believe that you're not going to help them that you're going to do something about it, right? So this is a question based on what a politician should be being asked, right? There's nothing in there that's a personal affront to Jagmeet Singh. It's just, your party has this position. What are you going to say to people who feel that you're not representing Christians? And does he say, well, I'm going to do blah, blah, blah? Does he say, oh, no, what he says is, I don't like the person that's asking me the question and who they work for, so I'm not going to talk to you. Which means that if you are one of those people that doesn't fall into his category, he's not going to help you either. If you cast your vote for him, or if you live in his riding, but you didn't cast your vote for him, he's not going to help you. That's what he's saying. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. You either have to be on his side 100%, or he doesn't have to talk to you. He's not going to help you. Nothing. This is a man who's supposed to be the leader of the NDP, who wants to be Prime Minister of Canada, standing there in a room full of reporters, telling them that he will not help anybody that he does not expressly pre-approve. Where are we living? How far have we fallen that this is the kind of leadership that Canada has? David Menzies got to ask a question of Yves-François Blanchet. And I would say this about David Menzies. He gets thrown off a lot of property where their liberal rallies are being held if you watch his content. It's kind of a sad testament to what's supposed to be the government of this country that can't even handle a question that they did not pre-approve. And it also is a statement to the fact that the corporations are the only people that are going to get any benefit from certain aspects of the government. There will be no innovation because innovation that is not pre-approved by the government will be thrown off the property.
Mr. Blanchet, good evening. David Menzies with Rebel News.
Here's David.
Mr. Blanchet, since 1941, a pipeline has brought oil from Portland, Maine to Montreal. Over the years, it has brought hundreds of millions of barrels of oil, much of it from OPEC dictatorships. Why have you never, not even once, opposed OPEC conflict oil being imported through an aging pipeline? Why do you prefer OPEC conflict oil over Alberta ethical oil?
I seem to believe that you already have the answer you want to write, so your question seems to contain the answer. I believe I am the one who authorized the change of direction in Enbridge Line B in 2013, which seems to prove that I'm not a fanatic against oil. But I believe that we've got to reduce our consumption of oil progressively, including from Alberta, because we are clearly being very expensive for every family in Quebec and Canada and destroying the whole planet. The denial of the reality of climate change since the beginning of this campaign and the change of heart of Mr. Carney, who decided to be more conservative than Mr. Poiliev, is very harmful for environment.
Destroying
Mr.
the
Blanchet,
whole
just to
planet.
follow up on that question, your party and your stance on pipelines would seem to be diametrically opposed to Quebecers. A poll came out showing that 74% of Quebecers support the building of new pipelines. Why are you and your party not in sync with the majority of people in this province, sir?
Don't you know my love for commenting polls?
I will acknowledge that he answered the question much better than, say, Jagmeet Singh did, but if you know the Francophone in any way, shape, or form, the Québécois, his answer was very, very acidic. It had a lot of hostility in it. And I have to wonder if the hostility was directed at him for speaking English or was it directed at him because he's independent? And then I have to ask myself, because Yves-François Blanchet is university educated, why he would have such distaste for an independent media that was asking him a question about oil. Why would he not use that opportunity to say his position on oil in greater clarity instead of going on some rampage about how he turned a pipeline around that belonged to Enbridge? So he has no problem buying American oil, but he doesn't want to buy Canadian oil. And then we ask ourselves, why do we have 13 individual economies? Why do we not have Alberta and Quebec doing business to one another? And we then wonder, why is it that Quebec has no problem cashing the $13 billion that Alberta sent to them just last year? And then you say to yourself, well, no wonder Alberta doesn't want anything to do with Quebec. And you can hear all of that in that one answer, which for an individual who is trying to be an intelligent person, I would have expected better. However, that's what we have for leadership from the left in this country. They're just filled with hate. They're filled with anger. They're filled with hostility, all the while demanding that you accept them for who they are, while they snap and snarl and refuse to acknowledge you if they don't accept you for who you are. It's a very, very shameful position, and certainly nothing that is close to what it means to be a Canadian. All right, well, you let me know what you think. Do you think that they behaved properly, appropriately, or do you feel that they were behaving in a way that was not indicative of what a man who's trying to be a leader should do? I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.